Welcome to our first session here at Specula. We thought, since obviously new year and a lot of people are starting to kind of think about their career path and what's the next right move in their job journey, thought it'd be good to start off the new year with a new webinar session around career planning for 2022. And we have a very special guest speaker as well. We'll let Alan introduce himself in a minute, but we thought this is quite timely with the new start, and this is something that a lot of us always think about when we start new pathway into our careers. What is the next right move, and when should we take that move? And I think it's something that a lot of people kind of leave to the hands of their managers or their corporate world to kind of take into account. But I think since the pandemic, a lot of people have started to think about, actually, I need to take control of my career path myself and really follow my passion and purpose in life. And so that's why we thought it'd be a good time to sort of discuss this and think about how can we go back to the drawing board and think about what is the next right move. Is it time to continue this pathway, or is it time that maybe we should change career tracks? So yeah, Alan, we're really pleased to have you with us today, and yeah, look forward to hearing a little bit more about your own experiences and background so far.
Thanks very much, Zara. Thank you very much indeed for inviting me along today to speak to you, and hi to everybody who's watching out there, and Happy New Year. I guess it's not too late to say Happy New Year. So yeah, it's a time of the year typically when people begin to think about what the past year has been like, or what the past 2 years have been like. I think in these current times. What it means for them, and what they can do going forward. I guess particularly as there is hope that perhaps we're emerging from the crisis that we've been in the past 2 years. But I think whatever's going on, it's always the question that people ask themselves: where are they now, and where are they going next? So yeah, delighted to be with you. My name's Alan Hayes. I'm a career coach. I run my own practice called Discover Career Coaching. And I also volunteer with a not-for-profit career coaching service known as Brave Starts. So career coaching, I mean, what does it all mean, calling myself a career coach? Principally what I do is I work with people who are making critical decisions about their career paths. Mm-hmm. And those people might be at the outset of their careers, they may be still in full-time education, may have recently come out of full-time education, or they could be mid-career. They could be people very late in the career, and quite honestly, that's a lot of the focus of the Brave Starts organisation that I'm involved with, focusing on people over 50 who may find themselves forcibly in a situation where they have to reconsider their lives, or voluntarily they've done one thing for a long time and they find they've got the luxury perhaps to be able to think about something different. So I work with people making critical decisions, and what do? I set off on a bit of a journey with them to help them explore their own interests, what it is they feel they're good at, and try and match up their interests and what they're good at with a number of different options as to where they might find a job or find a career. And that's a process of exploration. And in doing that, I take a very conversational approach, and also an evidence-based approach, actually, because I'm a certified business psychologist. I have an MSc in Organisational Psychology, and I'm a licensed career coach as well. So what I do, I like to ground in the evidence of personal psychology. So yeah, setting off on conversations with people and exploring in an evidence-based way what their interests are and what their skill sets are, and then how to go about using those, really helping people to create visions of the types of jobs they would like to do, or the type of life that they would like to lead. And I think that's extremely important, because our careers are not separate from the rest of our lives. They're intimately bound up with our lives. And so I think it's very important to actually consider the question, what do you want your life to look like, rather than simply, what job do I want? So I think that's important. So I set up on a process of exploring, then visioning, and then helping people to create action plans for how they might go about either advancing in their career or changing career. And that could involve acquiring new skills. A lot of people come to the conclusion, actually, they're okay in the job where they are. They perhaps just need to reframe the way they're thinking about their job, or perhaps even the organization they're in has got plenty of opportunity for them to do something else and to actually create conversations within their own organization that might take them somewhere different. So helping people to create action plans to secure the best way forward. So, that's what I do as a career coach. I haven't always been a career coach. So when it comes to changing careers, I've been there. You can probably tell I've got quite a bit of grey hair on top here. I graduated in 1982, probably before many of you were born, I would think, many of you are watching today, certainly Zara. So that's 40 odd years ago now, isn't it? Yeah, 40 years ago this year. So I graduated in civil engineering. So my first role was with consulting civil engineers, designing roads, bits of the North Circular, various housing developments across the country. That's what I did. I then actually changed the type of role within civil engineering I did, and I moved away from designing things into building things. So I joined a civil engineering contractor, and I was responsible for managing the construction of parts of the M4, parts of the M3, power stations, Manchester Metrolink, probably a number of things you've heard of. Yeah. And then after 7 years of doing that, I changed again. So I decided I didn't want to be on construction sites anymore. I quite wanted to follow what I liked doing at school, actually, which was writing and being creative about things. So I got into business development in the construction industry. So I kind of changed my direction within the industry I was familiar with. And I have to say, I felt I found my niche, and I occupied that kind of role for a long time. And finally left industry about 5 or 6 years ago, having become fairly senior in a role responsible for strategy and corporate development for some fairly major construction companies. And then after that, again, I've kind of followed interests that I'd had for a long time. I've been interested in organizations and why people behave the way they do in organizations. And so I went back to college to do an MSc in Organisational Psychology at Birkbeck, age 57. Yeah, and graduated when I was 59, so I became a postgraduate when I was 59, and then became a licensed career coach. So, it's not just a label on the tin that I've got. I feel I've got the life experience of having been through change as well. So hopefully that's something I can bring, which is of benefit to you in our discussion today.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating journey you've been through, and yeah, there's a lifetime of experiences that there's so much to learn from, and I can certainly resonate with a lot of the things that you mentioned in terms of your career path, because I also did chemical engineering myself and worked for a year and kind of decided to move into business development. So did some sales activities within the business development and IT world, and then now kind of customer success. But I think it's quite nice to see somebody else with more experience having kind of gone through somewhat similar type of journey. And I'm curious to know what kind of led you to make the change or the move from engineering and that sort of that technical path to a soft skill side and business development. And
yeah, I think perhaps I was an accidental engineer. I can remember, going back to my school days, pre-16 school. What I enjoyed doing most was creative things in writing in particular. So I enjoyed writing stories and thinking about stories. But there was a part of me, and we can go into kind of family backgrounds and our own sense of identity and what we ought to be, and how that stems from our family and the communities we live in. And, I grew up in what you might call a very working class type of family. And my parents didn't know what managers were. They didn't know what universities were. They were something that posh people did. So, what was I to do? I couldn't see myself writing anything and making any kind of living out of writing something. That wasn't what people from my background did. So I kind of, landed in this space where I thought engineering would be something that I could do and would actually earn me a living. So, that's the kind of path I pursued, in spite of really not enjoying maths when I was at school.
Wow.
It was something, although it was something I was determined to master in order to earn a living. So that was my driver. So yeah, I mean, so once I've made those decisions about subjects to study at school, that kind of rolled on through. I didn't do A levels. I did no ND in engineering. I dropped out of that because I didn't like it, but I found a job in engineering as a junior technician. Yeah, so I kind of had those things in the background. So I kind of went through the stage of doing something, earning a living, pursuing it, and doggedly, and yes, enjoying it to a degree. But then ultimately, I think being in a position where I could afford to step away from what I was doing, because I'd earned money, I paid for the house, I'd done other things, to be able to really reconnect perhaps with some of the things that I really did enjoy when I was younger, and that kind of led me back to organisational psychology. So I really enjoyed the work I was doing in business development, which was looking at what organisations should become and what resources we needed to employ and the skills we needed to employ and how to develop people as well. So I did a lot of kind of graduate development work within the organisations I was in, and that was very rewarding for me. So I kind of returned to those things I really enjoyed doing, I guess.
Yeah, you've just touched on quite a deep root cause here, because what you mentioned, coming from working class background, and that stereotype of, if you want to be successful and earn a good living, kind of have to go into the typical path like an engineer or a doctor, and kind of it was pretty much similar situation with myself as well, that if you really want to achieve something in life, you have to either be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, and I kind of tried to become a doctor. Luckily that didn't work out, so then I pursued engineering. And I feel like this is probably, even though you might think times have changed, but it hasn't really. And those stereotypes are so deeply embedded that it's very hard. It's kind of part of our DNA in a way. And it's really hard to kind of overcome them and follow what is truly your passion, what is truly resonating with you. And I see that every day. Like, it was quite difficult for me to make the decision that I don't want to become an engineer and move into more commercial and customer facing roles. But I see it in my friends and also our members who are like in a role that they definitely don't enjoy, and they know it, but because they believe this is the path that's going to lead them on to success, they kind of stick at it. So what advice do you have for people who are on the wrong path and they know it and it's quite painful, but they kind of don't feel like they've got the, I guess, the right to make the decision, or they feel like they're risking their future?
Okay. I think it's difficult to give very generic advice because everybody's circumstances are different. And, even if I reflect on my own path, I think there's a natural evolution in it. I kind of look back on my own career and say to myself, it served a purpose. It did serve a purpose in that, I think for my personality when I was younger, I don't think I would have had the confidence or the personal skills to be able to perhaps work in a creative industry or with people. And that kind of developed throughout a long career for me. So I kind of think that I pursued a career which was right and was doing things for me. Because, yes, it was the only way I could conceive of the way of earning the money that I felt I needed to in order to be able to live a comfortable life in later life. So I think, some people may feel very secure financially early on in their lives for whatever reason. And I can think of a friend of mine, an old school friend of mine, who I still see right now, actually. And he's never worried about money, never, ever. He came from quite a well-off family, not a hugely well-off family. His father was an artist and his mother worked in social sciences, both very bright people. but he had a confidence, I think, about his own intelligence and his own capabilities to be able to say to himself that whatever he did, it would turn out okay. Something would turn out okay. And so he was able to take that path from a very early, that kind of devil may care approach, if you like, from a very early age. For other people who might not necessarily have that confidence, it can be quite difficult to overcome. And so there can be a reason for sticking for something, with something for a while, until such point as you feel that it's right to move on. So you might evaluate the situation as, this is wrong for me. But you might also say, well, hang on, okay, 5 years' time, if I do X, Y, and Z, I'll have paid off the mortgage or I've done something or whatever. And then it will be the right time for me to move something out to something else. But I think it's difficult to give a generic advice. And I think that's why it's important to, when I work with people, to address each person's situation independently, and for people to make their own decisions about what's right for them, rather than following a narrative about just follow your passion, because for every Steve Jobs who's followed their passion, there are 10,000 others who did the same thing and it didn't quite work out. So it's very easy to get sucked into a narrative that all you have to do is follow your passion and success will follow. But that's not always the case, not for everybody. Okay, so yeah, my advice to anybody is be conscious of their whole circumstances and what it means for them, and don't be led, I think, by what you're seeing on YouTube videos or in LinkedIn or in other social media things. There will be a time and a solution that's right for you. Yeah, absolutely. Very specific. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, and you're definitely right in terms of, I guess, there is a journey to everything, and kind of you can't skip steps to just like reach your passion or whatever. So in terms of, I guess, building the confidence part, I think that's probably a big part, right? Is there any tactical or practical steps that we can take to help ourselves build our confidence, but also, rather than making the jump overnight, kind of building steps to move towards the right direction?
Yeah, I think there is. And I think it's about objective feedback you trust, perhaps. So self-examination, effective feedback you trust. I could perhaps give you a list of half a dozen kind of tests to try online or whatever, and you might be able to go off and do those tests. And but if you're sitting in a room by yourself, you look at the results and say, well, what does this really mean for me? Or what do other people achieve in these things? So how does it all fit together? So I think it's helpful to actually, if you really do have a mentor or somebody you can, who you think would be a good mentor for you at work, to get a mentor. And I think mentoring, lots of research being done on the effectiveness of mentoring and coaching, and mentoring in work has been found to be very, very effective for people. So I think if you can find a mentor in work or out of work, that can be very useful, because the kind of conversations are useful there. But you're knowing a bit about your skills, and early on in your career, you haven't necessarily done enough to know what your skills are, but there are some examinations which are useful: verbal reasoning tests and numeric reasoning tests and mechanical reasoning tests, which will give you an idea of how you score on those tests, and also how that lies in relation to the rest of the population. I can relate this back to my own experience as well. As I told you already, how I kind of quite enjoyed writing at school and whatever. But I, as an engineer, you'd expect me to score extremely high on numeric reasoning. But actually, my highest scores were on verbal reasoning and language usage. And until I saw those scores in front of me, I didn't really believe it. And then somebody said, well, okay, you're in the upper, the 85th percentile. Well, that's more than most people in an engineering discipline. So in actual fact, within my peer group in engineering, I was probably in the top 1% or 5%, whatever it might be, of people who were good at language usage, which was where my uniqueness came, if you like, in engineering. He was an engineer who could write and who could critically analyze readings as well. So I think, yeah, those objective tests, such as reasoning skills, numeric, verbal, language usage, are very useful. But having a mentor that you can talk to as well and test your thoughts on career direction and your own skills and abilities is very useful as well. But a mentor you trust, not one who's simply going to give you the company line.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you've definitely touched the right point there, and I guess I could take this point as a as a way of informing our audience that actually at Specula, if you are looking for a mentor, you can actually put a request through on the website and the area that you're looking for a mentor or coaching, and then we'll try and match you up with someone who is relevant to kind of help you in that area. But I guess on the topic of skills and strengths and interests, one of the things that has always been quite, I guess, interesting for me is knowing when is it the right time for you to pursue something based on your skills and strengths versus your interests. Because when I was in school, I was relatively good at science and maths, and hence why I kind of thought, well, what's a typical career path that leads on to is engineering. And I mean, I kind of stuck with it and finished the degree and tried to even pursue a career in engineering, but I just really didn't enjoy the career path. I was a lot more interested in the softer skill careers and, you know, client-facing type of roles. So how do you know when is it, I guess, how do you, I guess, balance the need to follow your skills versus your interest if they differ or if they're not necessarily aligned?
Yeah, they might well be different, and it's a very good point, actually. You know, what you're good at might not necessarily be what you enjoy doing, actually.
Yeah.
It's lovely if you can blend the two together, I think, actually, which is what I think I did in the latter part of my career. So, yeah, I guess my interest, or did my skills, not quite sure what to reflect on mine. I've already said I wasn't very good at maths. I guess, yeah, when to do that. If you can go for your interest very early on, that makes a lot of sense. And I think if you're interested in something as well, I think this is a critical point, actually. If you're interested in something, you're likely to learn about something. If you're not interested in something, it's unlikely that you'll learn about something. So you may not be good at something, first of all, but you may be very interested in something. So that interest may drive an intense learning curve for you, actually. So I think that's possibly a relevant point, which balances going for interest over ability, first of all. It may be that, yeah, the other things that are kind of a consequence of pursuing your interests and developing those as opposed to skills is that if you are interested in something and you become interested in learning, then that's going to be apparent to other people in your workplace as well. So therefore your enthusiasm for what you do is likely to shine through, and how you convey your enthusiasm to other people and what that means in terms of leadership and performance of other people will happen as well. So that perhaps there's consequential effects of pursuing the interests rather than the abilities very early on. But I wouldn't knock going for the abilities, because you can quickly, quickly earn money perhaps, or promotions. Plenty of examples of people who don't like what they do, but actually they're very, very good at it. And so they're highly valued. And in that case, sometimes I say to people, if they really don't know what to do, well, if you don't know what to do, earn as much money as you can by the time you're 40, and then do what you really want to do. So, even if you do pursue your skills rather than your interests, there is always the opportunity to actually, as I have done perhaps, take another path later on. And that can be a very rich path, actually, because you've led a richer life through a variety of experiences as opposed to just one thing. But there's no right way. There's no right way. I hope that's okay of an answer. It's not very difficult.
No, it definitely makes sense. And one of the things that you mentioned earlier on, which I thought was I was quite keen to learn more about, you said you help individuals when it comes to making critical decisions in their lives. Yeah. And what I've kind of sort of learned in my limited experience so far is that people wait until they hit a crisis point or something is really not working out to make that critical decision. Perhaps they could have prevented that crisis point if they had taken the decision earlier, but for some reason making change is difficult. But I think since the pandemic, people have started reflecting more about what changes they need to make to be happier. So it would be good to learn from yourself in terms of when it comes to making those critical decisions, where should you start? Well, if you don't know what to do, and if you also have like an inkling of what might be the right next move, how would you go about pursuing it in a way that feels safe and not comfortable, but in a way that feels a bit safer for you if you are scared?
I would say begin exploring the move, actually. I think the experience or the methods I employed for exploring career changes later in my career, I think if I'd have known about the acceptability of those methods earlier in my career, then perhaps I would have used them, actually. But we get into this, the world of networking then, or building a network, which I think is extremely important. So let's say, for example, you're in a job, but you don't like it, but you have an idea that you might like another kind of job. It is possible that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence, and what you like, you might find when you get to it, you don't like it. So it's a good idea to explore what that is, what that thing is really like, what you're being attracted to, by having conversations with people, who are in the field that you find yourself attracted to. And to see if you can gain any more information about what it's really like, but also the steps that you need to take in order to get into it. I think if you can build a position whereby you end up creating a path into a new job or a new career, then it's much easier rather than just a very abrupt jump. So one which is built on knowledge and built on having built a network where you may be invited into a new career because somebody's gained confidence in you, and that's quite a good way of doing things. But I would say that it's quite difficult to, in any job, know exactly what it's like until you actually do it. So appearances can be deceptive.
Yeah.
It can be deceptive. So I think to explore, to build a network and create conversations with people, which are exploratory conversations, identify somebody in the field that you think you're interested in, drop them a line, might be through LinkedIn, might be through some other contact, and perhaps say that you're thinking, you've been doing such and such, but you're actually quite attracted to whatever field this is. Do you mind if we have a conversation so I can find out more from you about what it's actually like? Yeah. And then that way you're not asking for a job, you're actually just asking, somebody, what is it like to work with you? Can you tell me a bit more about it? Can you tell me what you think? And more often than not, people are only too happy to help.
Yeah, that's very good.
That's the way I would go about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And the kind of something that I came across myself as well, like right after I graduated, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I decided, well, like you said, the grass is greener on the other side. So I thought maybe the grass is greener in Australia.
Okay.
So I decided to move abroad. And I thought maybe like moving to the other side of the world would help me figure out what it is that I want to do. Truth is, probably could have done the same thing I did here, but for some reason, when you're in a foreign land, you're more in an exploratory phase or mindset than you are when you're at home. And what I found that kind of works well for me is going to events, like virtual events or in-person events, networking with people and learning.
Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point. Yeah. So, whatever field you're interested in, as you say, Zara, there are events, conferences around or exhibitions, go to those, and you can go onto any stand there and start to talk to somebody. And I think the key to it is to set up an exploratory discussion, an information gathering discussion, rather than thinking of it as I want a job discussion. Because if you start that discussion, it's a high risk discussion for the person you're talking to. Because they're feeling they either have to say yes or no to you, I have or I haven't. Whereas an exploratory discussion is yeah, I'm happy to share this information with you. And you never know, the person might be so taken with you during this discussion that actually they know a position you'd be ideally suited to in their organization, but treat it as an exploratory discussion, not an I want discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important. And thanks for bringing that up. I guess during those discussions, what would you say are some of the good questions to ask to kind of get the right information without having that individual to sell you all the positives of the role?
Yeah. Well, I think it's good to show somebody you've thought about yourself and what it is that you feel you're good at, and what it is that where it is that you feel your interests lie, and you know, the idea that how you see those fitting with the particular area you're looking at, and kind of check that what you're thinking about your interests and your skills is really what's needed in that particular area as well, whether it's something different. I think it's important to understand, you know, what are the kind of qualification routes or training routes to gaining access to anything meaningful in terms of a career in those particular areas are. Yeah, I think it's for me important to understand the environment you're going to be working in as well. I'm always loath to use the word culture, actually. Probably too much behind that to go into right now, actually. But the environment, you know, how much of the work you'll be doing will be, you know, very bureaucratic and, you know, lots of very regulated and having to comply with strict procedures. And do you really like working in a way that you have to comply with those strict procedures? Because you can have a vision of what you want to do in a particular area, but the reality of actually doing it can be quite different. Yeah. So best to have an exploratory conversation about, you know, what it really entails. You know, how much, you know, what is it that's important to you? If you value freedom, if you like taking your own initiatives and being very autonomous in the way you work, will you be allowed that autonomy, or will you find yourself in a very controlled environment? Yeah. Those kind of tensions. If you really do value spending time with your family, and why shouldn't you? Absolutely, why shouldn't you? Or being at home, having time with the children, whatever it is. Why shouldn't you? But if a job is going to take you outside that, and not, you know, you're going to be stuck in an office till 10 o'clock, be aware of that. Yeah. So really have an idea of, and this is where something called Shine's Career Anchors. Remember that, Shine's Career Anchors. There is a little online test you can do, which kind of helps you to identify what it is that is your career driver. And for some people it's lifestyle, for some people it's financial security, for some people it's being in control. Yeah, some people have to be in control of other people. It makes them function. Kind of weird, but they do. So understand what it is and whether that job will actually satisfy that inner need. Actually, if you go to my website, Discover Career Code, I've written a little article on Shine's Career Anchors. So it's the idea of an external career and an internal career, and whether the external matches the internal. So very important. Yeah, know the reality.
Yeah, we'll definitely include a link to your website in the video description as well, so people can have a visit. And I'm actually quite curious to have a look through that myself as well.
Yeah. Actually, it's on my LinkedIn page, not my website. So if you go to my LinkedIn page and you see articles I've written, then you'll find it on there. Yeah.
Excellent. So one of the the challenges or struggles for me personally as well, I appreciate this session is quite informative for my own selfish needs as well, to be honest. When it comes to, I guess, career discovery, and it's something that I've spent quite a lot of time on, from drastic changes from engineering to all of a sudden sales and customer success, but even now trying to figure out, like you said, the culture and the organization that fits with you. Because what I found that it was very hard for me to know until I had the opportunity to work both for big corporate and startup and see, okay, this is the difference. Kind of took some time, but when you are looking at those different jobs and the job descriptions sometimes can be quite vague and kind of like
Yeah.
focused on the tactical things. How would you filter out, based on the job description and the adverts that are available online, where should you put your time in? Because as you can imagine, job hunting is quite a time-consuming process itself. So how do you prioritize and how do you filter out what could be potentially in line with my skills and interests and what is not probably?
Very, very difficult to do from a job advert, because no job advert is going to, a job advert is a selling tool. It's a sales brochure, if you like. So it's not going to say anything. It's going to, portray the company in the best possible light. There can be warning signals. I mean, does the language fit with how you feel as a person, really? Or does it feel, and I say this as somebody who may be a more quiet or reserved person, does it feel as though it's an organisation full of people who are rah, rah, rah all the time, or vice versa, if you're a out and out extrovert and, a party person, party animal, does it sound like a very bureaucratic and staid organisation? But even that isn't a surefire thing. You can get into organisations and find that there are different cultures within the same organisation, which is why I think it's wrong to say that any organisation has any one culture. You'll find that, if there is indeed culture, you'll find that the same organisation may feel completely different in different parts of the organisation in different types of role. The marketing department might feel completely different to the engineering department, which might feel completely different to the accountancy department, etc., etc. So this idea of homogeny is very, very difficult. But again, where I would put my effort is perhaps not waiting for jobs to come to me, but for me to go to jobs. Yeah, and not even waiting for a job advert to appear. Actually, I would say to myself, what sort of company do I think I want to work for? You might know the name. It might be for whatever reason it might be, because it's a great sounding brand and it sounds great and glamorous, whatever it might be, or it's hugely respected for its engineering expertise, whatever it is. For me, without even waiting to see a job advert, I would probably try and create a conversation with that organisation to then sit down and make that exploratory discussion. And that way, I'm seeing the person in front of me. I'm finding out a bit about how welcoming that person is, and able to ask my own questions as well, and not responding to a job advert. And it may be that during the course of the conversation, the person says, well, actually, as I've said before, we might have a role that suits you in this area. We think you might be suited to this in our organisation, or whatever. So yeah, I'd say, where would I put my effort? Don't wait for jobs to come to me. Go to jobs. Go to jobs that aren't even there.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a very useful point. Thanks for sharing.
It's very difficult to tell what an organisation is like until you're in it. So if you do find that an organisation is different, don't be disappointed. Well, don't be disappointed in terms of, don't be hard on yourself for not finding out. It's very, very difficult. Really, it's only when you experience something. And even then, it might be only in that part of an organisation. You might find that you go to another part, and it's completely. Indeed, I've had that experience. I had experience of working with one organisation, and I found it far too competitive for my liking, far too big consultancy, and far too competitive. But a friend of mine works in that organisation, and she's doing absolutely fine, because she secured a role where she's seconded to another organisation entirely, and she's loving it. But she looks back and another part of the organisation sees how it is. So, different things, you can find something in an organisation somewhere, particularly if it's a big one.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. That networking piece and exploring and keeping in contact with people is absolutely key, because if you stay in touch with people from different parts, then they will probably automatically remember you as well if there is a new role.
Yeah. And if you do find yourself in a position within an organisation where you're really not enjoying it, then don't necessarily abandon the organisation. Perhaps, look in another part of it. There might be somewhere else in the organisation that that you're more suited to. Indeed, a lot of graduate roles these days, people are sort of rotated around different positions, and they might find themselves to fit in different positions. But accounting in one firm can feel completely different to accounting in another firm. So there's not a kind of universal feeling across all jobs and all organisations.
Excellent. I've definitely learned quite a lot from that, and we'll definitely keep it in mind in terms of the exploring and finding a right mentor. And I think that's very crucial, both in terms of the skill development piece, but also finding out what's your next move. And it's, in my mind, it's never too early to think about your next move, because you might discover you need to spend 2 more years in this role before being able to pursue that.
Yeah, well, I think it's always useful, if you can, to have in mind, you know, what is your end game? Where is this going for you? And there's nothing wrong in arriving at your end game, which might be a very technical role, and that being your role for the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with that, you know, because you may develop and master and get absolutely expert at that particular role and really enjoy doing it. And what's wrong with that? You know, we don't have to look at careers as, you know, the classic definition of a kind of ever progressive progression through roles and hierarchy and salary. That doesn't have to be a career. I rather like the definition of a career, which is a project of the self. Yeah, so a career is a project about you. Yeah, about what you want your life to be, and how you want to enjoy your life, and how you want to spend time enjoying what you do. There's nothing wrong with devoting yourself to one job for the rest of your life. There really isn't. You become expert at it.
Yeah, absolutely. As they say, the best thing, I guess the best thing to achieve is to be able to work at something that you enjoy doing, that you would be prepared to do it for free. But imagine someone pays you to do something that makes your soul come to life, I guess, in a cliche way.
As I noted on one LinkedIn comment recently, actually, you know, Mick Jagger has been doing the same job for 60 years. It's a bit before your time, really, but Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Charlie Watts, God rest his soul, were doing the same job for 60 years, and they loved it and they hated it at times. They fell out with each other, and they were a great team, you know. So yeah. Or you might want to do different things every 1 or 2 years. Nothing wrong with that either. It depends what drives you. It depends what drives you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Alan. That's been a very, very eye-opening conversation. Definitely left me with a lot of food for thought, and I hope it's the same for our audience as well. So if people want to learn more about your work or get connected with you, what's the best way to reach out?
LinkedIn is the best one. So you'll find me on LinkedIn, Alan Hayes, and Discover Career Coaching. So yeah, do that. Yeah. So it'd be lovely to hear from whoever's been listening, and it's certainly been a pleasure to talk to you today as well, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. We'll definitely include a link to your LinkedIn profile on the video. And if you guys want to learn more about different career paths, you can always become a member on specula.co.uk, and we can match you with a relevant coach or mentor as well. Yeah, thank you so much, Alan, for that amazing discussion around career planning for 2022. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.